Who are we? Why are we here? Where are we going? Why is there certain control and structures in place in our society to keep a certain order? Who controls that order? Illicit drug trades, child trafficking rings, all over. This is why these people are being arrested. This is why there's in excess of 70,000 sealed indictments in America right now. It's insane just how much information is hidden in plain sight.
Wow.
We need to scale, and we need to scale quickly. This is why I support Bitcoin SV. This is why we support Bitcoin SV. This is why we support real Bitcoin, and we don't have time to fuck around. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bitstocks podcast with yours truly, CEO and founder of Bitstocks. And I have none other than our very own Antonio Shillingford, one of our portfolio managers here at Bitstocks, who's here to hash out a slightly more controversial subject matter. Right? Yeah. I think it's very fitting that there's a few people really that could be sitting in this seat right now from Bitstocks. We all have very similar views, which is why we do consider ourselves a family. And that's by family, I very much mean in the military sense as well. But the unique thing, I guess, with you and I is we are brothers. People might not know that because clearly I'm way better looking than you are. Right?
So he says.
You can cut out that part. Right? But more importantly, we've both been exposed to quite similar information. Yeah. Right? We had a very similar upbringing naturally, but we had exposure to one individual in particular from a young age that I've never spoken about publicly. And I did promise and pledge to you, to everyone here at Bitstocks, and most importantly, I pledged to myself that Bitstocks TV will be a platform of truth. Yeah. Bitstocks TV will be a platform of enlightenment, and Bitstocks TV, point blank, will be a platform where I don't give a fuck what people think. Right? Okay. I will speak truth, I will speak light, and I challenge those who watch this to debunk what I say, because if you, and this kind of mantra that we have every single episode that we do, right? We want people to look into this. We don't want people to be lazy and take what I say as an authority and consider it fact straight away and just harbor that in their mind and then operate and change their perspective based on something that they haven't fact checked themselves, okay? We really have done our research. In fact, the story is pretty amazing. The story really as to what set us off on our journey in the first place. And we're going to get on this. I'm not teasing the audience. We are going to really get into this. But I just want to make it so clear that what we're about to discuss here and what we're going to continue to discuss, this isn't going to be a whole closed caption. The world is way too sophisticated to cover it in 1 hour. Right? But I think a great thing to do on this podcast at least is let's just establish some base foundations that we can pick up later. So what's your beginning? Tell me your story.
Yes. So just to detail that properly, I'll pick on a few points. But yes, very, very similar upbringings to the point where we actually even shared a bunk bed.
Mm-hmm. I was top bunk, just let everyone know, I was top bunk. That's the authority. That's
top bunk without a ladder, so you had to jump up every single night.
No one needs to know that.
So yes, we was exposed to a particular individual who we actually had an interest in this before this individual actually came into our lives and basically laid out a lot of information for us. So we were digging into this as kids. This individual came into our lives, basically dropped a lot of information that was solid and concrete. We then took that information and it just literally went out of control. The deep dives were ridiculous. And bear in mind, me at that particular time, I was 12 to 13 years old. And I had an interest in that. And funny enough, I know this is going to be a bit controversial, but where it really and truly stemmed from was extraterrestrials.
Yeah. So just to get indication, so at that time, I think you're probably 12 because I was 17. So my first business ever was computers. As you know, you was helping me out build out a lot of these computers.
And we turned the TV room basically into a factory.
Yeah. The whole house was a warehouse. The whole house, you couldn't use the downstairs toilet. The whole house was a bloody warehouse. And I was doing crazy things like overclocking. I was ripping up the refrigeration unit downstairs, changing the gas. I can't remember what gas I changed it to. R504. Can't remember the name of the gas that I changed it to. But I was calling my Pentium 4 processor to sub 30 degrees Celsius, and I had a 3 gig at 4 4.4 gig, I think I got it up to, and 4.2 gig stable, right? Nerding out, going slightly off topic here. But the advantage is I always had access to components. We always had access to components. And the reason why we always had access to components was that our uncle owned and ran a computer store. And even to this day, he still owns that very same store. And he had a very interesting customer, as I guess what we can say, a very interesting customer who came in, who was buying his computer equipment from our uncle. And then this very interesting customer turns out to be all over British news, British television, BBC News. In fact, he even done an interview at our uncle's computer store off the back of this big blowout. And this big blowout was this individual was responsible for the largest military hack in history. This individual hacked NASA.
Yep.
From the UK, foolishly from his house, on a 56K modem. Right? This individual hacked NASA.
And the worrying thing is, from what I understand, it wasn't even that hard.
No, and I'm pretty confident he said that there was more than one person there. So to those that don't know, the individual that we're speaking about is Gary McKinnon. I met Gary McKinnon off the back of obviously him buying his equipment from my uncle, and just got to have some interesting conversations with him. Brief moment in our history, but something that changed the course of our lives from that moment, right? And I remember asking Gary, like, because at that point, these are subjects I've always been interested in. And I think, on that point, I think the world is interested in this subject. If you just look at some basics, what are the top grossing movies? They're all sci-fi movies, Star Wars, and all of these films, anything to do with space exploration, gravity, no pun intended, right? Interstellar. All of these movies that are tied into human beings being more than what we told we are, right? Human beings exploring and discovering space. Human beings getting a deeper understanding to life and universe, technology, spirituality, the duality between the two, the path of the dark side, the light side, the Jedi. We seem to be captivated by these stories. And anyone who says that people who speak about this are crazy and all the rest of it, well, you're being a hypocrite. Because if that's the case, well, why are we spending so much money being entertained by what we think at that moment in time is just a sci-fi interpretation as to what we think something may be based on imagination? What about if it's the opposite? Yep. What about if it's not imagination? What about if these are actually reenactments of events that are even far beyond the fiction?
100%. And the thing is, everyone can test this themselves, because 10 years ago, not even that long ago, to talk about topics like this will be completely taboo. You would be literally looked at like you should have a tinfoil hat on. Now, when I'm having these sort of conversations, let's say, for example, when I'm at a dinner, I'll be having this conversation and touching through meaty topics. And as opposed to me being sort of reserved and shy and lowering my voice because I didn't want other people hearing.
Man, this crazy people talk about aliens, man. Talk about greys, and the world's run by greys, man.
And now this time round, as opposed to me having to lower my voice, I just talk at a normal level. And then you start to realize that, funny enough, the people that are sitting next to you having their conversations are no longer interested in their conversations. They're trying to eavesdrop into everything that you're saying. Because the reason why that has happened is the fact that we talk about this a lot on a lot of our previous episodes, is how information is perceived, how it was back in the day, because the majority of information that we used to get was from mainstream media, meaning that at the time it was 6 corporations. Now that has greatly reduced because there have been mergers. But 6 corporations at that particular time owned 90% of Western media, meaning that they could push whatever narrative that they wanted to at that particular time. The internet has completely destroyed that. It's afforded us the opportunity to get peer-to-peer information. And because we have that, it's now expanding people's minds because we're not so closed in. And people are asking more questions. And when statements are made, just why? That is exactly why we have the narrative of yes, we do talk about a lot of controversial topics, but we want you guys to dig into each and every single one of those topics and actually find out what the real truth is.
Yeah, and these are not unlinked events. These aren't unlinked conversations. We're speaking on these things, and we're going to go in a lot more detail. And I'm going to go back to explaining just the relationship that we had with Gary McKinnon and what was discussed very, very shortly. But what makes this really interesting is how this all ties back to Bitcoin, right? And what we're doing here at Bitstocks as a byproduct of having access to this information and building on this information over the last decade and a half. We're very methodical with what it is that we're doing and why we're doing what it is that we're doing. And money, yes, is a fuel, but in the sense of that it provides us the resources in order to build and do what it is that we need to do at a much larger scale. It is ultimately a byproduct of our mindset and what it is that we're doing here. So going back to Gary McKinnon and the things that we discussed. Now, firstly, dude, why do you want to hack NASA? Right?
That's a good place to start.
I was like, I get it, but like, dude,
bit worrying.
Why do you want to hack NASA? Like, Obama wants your ass in Guantanamo, right? It's 60 years they wanted to give him. Yeah. 60 years they wanted to give this guy and just throw him in Guantanamo. I'm pretty sure Obama just got into office.
Right? It would have just been that.
He was adamant on ripping Gary McKinnon out of the UK. Luckily, his legal counsel successfully managed to keep Gary within the country, as Gary also has Asperger's syndrome as well. So ultimately saying that it was something that he couldn't really necessarily control. He needed to get answers to the questions that he had. And those questions ultimately was, are we alone? What does the government know? And what can I discover if I looked, right? So he told me about the pre and post Photoshop images of the moon. So he's in on NASA servers. And he said that he saw certain images of pre and post Photoshop images. Post Photoshop images is what you see on a NASA website, right? The moon's fairly nice and smooth looking. You only get to really see one side, never get to see the dark side. But we just basically see one side and believe that somehow that's acceptable, right? On the images that Gary saw, on the other hand, he saw broken domes and broken obelisks, and also a crashed craft, if memory serves me correctly. Okay, and he also at that time dropped something called Solar Warden, which completely went over my head. Absolutely went over my head at that moment in time. And it's only really, I would say, about 6 years ago that reappeared back on my radar. Okay, now, why is this so important, and why are we even speaking about this? Why do we at Bitstocks, on Bitstocks TV, a cryptocurrency firm, why are we even speaking about this right now? Because you have to understand, and we have to understand, and we definitely want to provoke the questions of origin. Who are we? Why are we here? Where are we going? Why is there certain control and structures in place in our society to keep a certain order? Who controls that order? Why is there a different faction to what people would think NASA is? Why is there such a fixation with space? Why do we have cults in different societies? Why does science control one faction of our education? Why does religious control another faction of our societal behaviors and education? And why are both ultimately told, you do you, we'll do us, let's not mix? And then we had massive breakthroughs of amazing scientists through the years who have taken this and they've combined them together and have had a huge, incredible breakthroughs. Okay. Tesla obviously being one person who has a completely different approach to how he looked at things and how he looked at the world. And the feats and the engineering feats that this man created are far more profound than Einstein. Far more profound. He should be far more respected and highly regarded than Albert Einstein, mostly because the biggest thing that Albert Einstein was speaking about was freaking wrong. That's another subject maybe for another day. And the reason why I bring up Tesla, let's really like ramp this up to the current day. Okay, and we can hash out more details about space programs, secret space programs, and all the rest as we put out more content with Bitstocks TV. But the reason why I bring up the subject of Tesla and how this is slowly getting closer to Bitcoin is upon the death of Nikola Tesla, he had research that was locked away in a vault. And upon his death, it was actually Donald Trump's uncle, if I'm not mistaken, John G. Trump. Let me just double check that I've got the spelling of his uncle correct. So Donald Trump's uncle, for now, I'm gonna run with John.
But from what I'm aware of, it was actually him that at that particular time went
John G.
in
Trump.
there. Yeah.
So John G. Trump was the individual that upon the death of Nikola Tesla went into the vaults of Nikola Tesla and took his research. So the greatest scientist of modern history, the uncle of the now president, went in and took secret research that the world wasn't even exposed to yet. Bear in mind, Tesla spoke about wireless power and wireless communication. He already had the idea and concept of the mobile phone way before we designed these things, right? He's the individual that created free energy, and then basically all the corporate bigwigs stepped in and said, where do we plot the meter? He's like, what are you on about? It's free. And that's when people had an issue with Tesla. Right?
100%.
So you're seeing these agendas.
And
okay?
you have to look at it in that way to understand why people would do these sort of things. Because you're talking about multi-billion pound industries that can effectively get destroyed just from someone releasing technology. Now, to bring this into cryptocurrency, and this may be a little bit premature, and I'm just going to let you do your thing on this, but to bring this into cryptocurrency, the whole argument on how much electricity that cryptocurrencies actually expend. The reason why that is no argument, because our technology that we actually have at the moment is far more efficient than what we truly believe. If we have access to 0 point energy, and that's exactly what you're talking about there, is it doesn't matter how much we're using. We can use as much as we want because we're not burning anything. And not just that, it's not costing any individual any money because it's free. It's something that is in the atmosphere that we can pull from the atmosphere and utilize.
Yeah, absolutely. So John G. Trump goes into Tesla Vault, now is wielding secrets, literally, I kid you not, zero exaggeration, secrets to the universe, okay? Now in the hands of the uncle of the now president. This knowledge and these ties are very much in the Trump family line. And then you study Trump, or I study Trump, okay? And I really pay attention to what he says. I never pay attention to people paraphrasing Trump, media telling you what someone has said. I don't think that's healthy for anyone, especially Trump. I don't think that's healthy for anyone. I watch the speeches myself. I analyze and I dissect what he's saying myself. And as we've both been trained over the years, it's not just what someone says, how someone says what they say, right? He is completely and utterly besotted with space. He speaks of the stars. And he says that we will conquer the stars. America will be the most dominant in space. We will dominate space, he says.
Yeah, and just as recently, he announced a space army, didn't he?
Yeah. Sixth faction of the US military, now officially the US Space Force, is official faction of the US military. And this is going under the radar.
And
completely under the radar.
This was a public speech that was made. He had a lot of individuals present. From what I understand as well, for now, the Air Force are going to be heading up that particular faction. Then it will just stem out. And wherever it ends up, it ends up. But what people need to realize as well, yes, he announced that, but that's something that we've had for a very long time now. Yeah. A very long time. Yeah.
So off the back of what Gary McKinnon sparked for the two of us, and most certainly for myself, that then went on to a decade and a half daily binge of expanding upon that knowledge and really delving into areas that cover a very holistic view as to how this world is orchestrated. This goes to Genesis, and this even predates Genesis, the research it is that we've been doing. So the reason why this is important to speak about, one, yeah, it's interesting as hell, right? But the reason why it's important to speak about on this medium and this platform is everything on this planet, everything to do with how this planet is being managed and governed and run is all based around space and human beings' desire to unlock the secrets of the universe. Some human beings on this planet have managed to unlock many secrets. Issue is, they create pockets of knowledge. A more abrasive word of calling a pocket of knowledge will be a cult. Masonry, Templars, Bilderberg group. You've got all of these different groups which ultimately are just different factions which now cause the more blanket term the deep state. The symbols demonstrate this. And people assume that these symbols are just instantly nefarious and negative, okay? And people throw around the word cult and occultism like occultism and cult is a bad term and a bad word. No, it's just a Latin word for hidden. So these groups and these societies are fixated with hidden information. They're fixated with keeping a hierarchical structure to all the top secrets. There's low-hanging fruits, and the higher you go up, the more information it is that you get access to. But it's also increasingly more difficult to climb up those ladders. And the things that you have to do in order to get up a further stage explains a lot of our geopolitical climate.
And that touches back to the pyramid of power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and I've been banging on about pyramid power now for what, 5 years? Yeah, for about 5 years I've been banging on about the pyramid of power. And what the pyramid of power is a demonstration and a representation of really how the old guard has been ruling the planet. It is the representation really of the old guard. Whereas at the very top you have the divine right to rule, the ruling families who, through their birthright bloodlines and the preservation of their bloodlines, which is why they interbreed, they believe that they have a hierarchical advantage over everybody else. Okay, that subject in itself is a 2-3 hour podcast. Why they believe they have a divine right to rule, what the fact that their belief system is fundamentally satanic, and they have a Satanist belief system, and really what the Illuminati bloodlines are really all about. I really dislike that term being utilized for these groups. To be illuminated is to be one of light. To be one of light is to be one of knowledge. So naturally, if you are of light, are of knowledge, you are illuminated. Therefore, in comparison to everyone else, you are of light and everyone else is in the darkness, in the shadows. You are knowledge, they are not. It is such a complimentary term to use to these wankers.
Yep.
It really
yeah, 100% is.
Deep state, global cabal, group of wankers, however it is that you want to call it, that's a much more apt.
And the thing is, with these pockets, so these cabal groups, the information that they have access to and the information that they want to achieve is all spiritual. Mm-hmm. All of it is spiritual. Bear in mind, these are the people that are in control of monetary systems, whilst the majority of population are there to try and achieve some form of wealth and degree of wealth.
But more on the flip side of spiritual. You're completely absolutely right. But just to provide context so people could digest this a little bit easier, by spiritual, there's a flip side to that, which is ultimately feeding into demonic entities, right? There's a dark side to it. People call it black magic, dark magic, and whatever it is that people want to brand it to assimilate it into their own perspective, right? But really and truly, yes, these are fundamentally just ways of unlocking how to get access to the higher dimensions and informational fields that are within the universe and entities that exist within those different dimensional realities. So you have certain gateways. People speak about dimethyltryptamine, DMT, something that is naturally produced in our pineal gland and released upon a near-death experience or upon death. And this is why people see their life flash before their eyes and have a completely different view as to what this reality truly is. Because even with that, you break down the mathematics, okay, we live in a visible light spectrum. 0.0032% of all the informational fields that are available. Visible light spectrum. This is our be all and end all. You're Googling it right now. Surely I'm accurate. I'm curious now, is it?
No, you are right. You're right, definitely. But I'm just literally getting it to tell you the parts that we can't see.
Okay, cool. So, but within the visible light spectrum, we're then limited again because it's 3 dimensions within the visible light spectrum. Okay, so what you can see is based on 0.0032%. What you can interact with is then another further limitation within what it is that you can see. Yeah. Beyond visible light spectrum, ultraviolet, infrared. And then you've got a plethora of different frequencies beyond that.
Yep, there's Y rays, X rays, UV, IR, microwave, FM, AM, long radio waves. These are all spectrums that we can't see.
Yeah, can't see, but very much we can interact with, and very much can interact with us and influence us and shape and evolve us, or even change our DNA in many different ways. And this is this whole new thing with 5G. 5G networks, microburst cellular communication, I believe is what the technology is. And just do a deep dive on that stuff. You don't even need to go that deep, just on the shallow surfaces. You start uncovering that these different informational fields and frequencies that we interact with are very present and very real and can be weaponized as well. So these individuals who really understand how to get access beyond visible light spectrum, okay? And they've built their cults and their societies and their branding and symbolism and complete utter belief systems and power structures to facilitate the integrity of those belief systems. And this has been going on for thousands of years. Thousands of years this has been going on. So what do they need to put into place to prevent people asking the questions like the ones that you and I ask?
You make them focus on something else.
You keep them on the hamster wheel. So this is how I made the connection between time and money. Fundamentally, at its root core, any aspiring wealthy individual, anyone ultimately who aspires to be wealthy, is seeking to purchase their time. If you really break it down, why do you aspire to be wealthy? I want to travel the world. I want to spend more time with my family. I want to spend more time with my kids. I want to pursue my passions. I like racing. I used to skateboard when I was younger and I had to give it up for a desk job. I want to go back to my passion.
Yeah.
Right? I want to explore nature and live within nature. I want to live a complete whole food, organic lifestyle. Therefore, I need to change location from the city lifestyle and hustle and bustle that comes with the city lifestyle to something more neutral, right? But you look at the statistics. The only time people could really actually afford to do what they really desire to do is once they've reached post-retirement age. This is meant to be 55 years plus. You look at the stats, circa more 70 years old, at least here in the UK, circa more 70 years old, right? Well, now we're too old and not in our optimum health to enjoy the freedom that we've now purchased, right? But then you have the fact that every pound, dollar, yen in circulation is owed to somebody by somebody. All money is fundamentally just debt, okay? Then you also look into the fact that there has been in excess of 4,000 different variants of government money. They have an average lifespan of 27 years. Like, I'm not saying I'm the foremost economist on this planet, but I can tell you, if something was tried 4,000 times in an average lifespan of 27 years, I'll say it's pretty shit engineering.
I'm no mathematician, but
2 + 2 don't equal jello.
Yeah.
And this is what they have been getting away with, because the system is designed by its very nature to rob you of your time. It's designed to have bankruptcy within the system. It's designed to fail. It's designed to experience hyperinflation. it is completely by design designed to rob the human population and keep us ultimately all on the hamster wheel. Because if you're on the hamster wheel and you're too burdened with your mortgage payments, you're too burdened with your car payments, your rent payments, child maintenance, food, clothing, these are the things that we must take care of first. These are our immediate concerns. And then even if you start getting ahead of that stuff, now you've got to worry about the Taliban and the terrorists and the fucking Osama bin Laden in some cave in Afghanistan who apparently is going to nuke us all, right? There's all of this fear-mongering, these fear strategies. And ultimately, I see terrorism as no different to sheep herding. There's a couple components of sheep herding, right? You've got the shepherd, you've got the sheep, which will represent the population, and you've got the sheepdog, which will represent, obviously, the terrorist, okay? So you've got unassuming population, just there chilling, eating some grass, right? And then out of nowhere, you've got this wild dog just running around barking, causing insane amount of havoc and chaos. So the population is now scared into taking action. Now they're looking around, they're looking for salvation. I am concerned, I need help. Who's gonna help me? Shepherd walks up to the white picket gate.
Yep.
Opens that white picket fence, salvation, your salvation. Sheep, population, oh my God, thank you, Mr. Shepherd. That gate looks amazing. Please open that gate. Sheep enter the gate, gates close behind them. Sheep now have a false sense of safety, a false sense of comfort. Completely false. What they didn't realize, and the most worrying and troubling thing, and it really is this simple, it is no more difficult than sheep herding. The very savior, their salvation, the person who opened that gate and took them away from the terror, was the very same individual who set the terror on them in the first place. If you look up terrorism on Google and you look at the definition of terrorism is spreading of fear in order to further a political aim. This is what terrorism is.
So again, hiding in plain sight.
Hiding in plain sight. What do we do when we have these events? 9/11, etc. We look to the government, right? We get a full sense of patriotism. And we look to the government as our savior. And then through that authorization that we are giving, the government's like, okay, well, I don't want to use the government as too much of a broad term, okay? Small factions within our government who unfortunately have the majority of the control. They now have all the artillery to now release their agendas.
Because they have the vote of the people at that particular point.
They have the vote of the people because before 9/11, the big thing in the 90s wasn't bin Laden, right? It wasn't even Saddam. The big thing, 80s, 90s, was nuclear war, right? That's what everyone was fearful of. That's the narrative that people were really speaking about. That's really the fear-mongering of the 90s, was nuclear war. And then, because that has massive reverberations for all of these other frequencies that we kind of touched on earlier on, when a nuke goes off, it sends a electromagnetic wave and shock through ultimately the filament that goes around the universe.
Which is the cosmic web, yeah.
There's a cosmic web of filament that goes around that when we started piss around with our bombs, hydrogen bombs and what have you, it set off a signal that authorized that we have hit a certain technological level, but also demonstrated that spiritually we are very adolescent.
And we don't understand the knock-on effects that actually launching something like that has to the cosmic web.
So as of effectively 90s, most of nukes were challenging to say the least to put to any good use. And then again, I challenged the audience to do some research around this subject of nuclear weapons being disarmed by different beings, essentially. Now,
to the point where it wasn't just them effectively getting disarmed, they were getting near enough destroyed from the inside to the point where those rockets weren't even firing anymore.
Firing systems way off, all radioactivity essentially became benign. They were duds. Complete fucking duds, paperweights. So I don't actually believe that program has really ever picked back up again. I think it's all fear porn. Now, the big shift that they had to do was create this terrorism narrative, because that's the shift that happened. That was the new fear porn that they were putting on us. And these are the tactics that are utilized, so people are being guided and navigated down a certain path, to be completely oblivious to the fact that there is ultimately almost, in fact, not even almost, there is a full-blown breakaway civilization on this planet, okay, which is factions of big corporations, certain individuals or factions within government, predominantly the more corrupt intelligence agencies within government, which is largely what Trump's speaking about draining the swamp with. And just the protection and preservation of all of these secrets at the detriment of everyone else on the planet. And if people don't believe in this, there's even a mandate. It's called the Georgia Guidestones. Their belief system, which I told you is fundamentally satanic, they are so arrogant that they've even listed on the Georgia Guidestones what their mandate is, what their plan is. In fact, I'll tell you what, I'll just name the first three. I'll bring it up on my screen right now.
And just to make this a little bit more relevant as well, just so that the people can properly understand the two different types of America that we have today, so that people can actually know that there's always a positive and there's always a negative side to anything, whether you're questioning government. Within government, there's always a positive and negative. So not every single person is bad. So that would be something that effectively you can hopefully clear up from.
So, all right, so Wikipedia, Georgia Guidestones. The Georgia Guidestones are a granite monument erected in 1980 in Elbert County, Georgia, in the United States. A set of 10 guidelines is inscribed on the structure in 8 modern languages. So kind of like, was it Tower of Babel-esque thing. 8 modern languages, and a shorter message is inscribed at the top of the structure in 4 ancient language scripts. Now, if I can just read, okay, it's insane just how much information is hidden in plain sight. So inscription number 1.
Wow.
Okay. Maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature. So we're talking about the depopulation agenda. And this is why people really stick their heels on the ground about vaccinations, 5G, the Monsanto case with this weed killer stuff seems to be in all of our food, even Ritz biscuits, by the way. Right, I used to love Ritz biscuits. Apparently that shit's in that too.
Yeah,
right?
And not to talk about films too much, but the Avengers film.
Yeah.
Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
That is exactly what the whole film was based on.
Completely what it's all based on. No, even Age of Ultron, yes, but I was watching Captain America Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Not too long ago. And that is completely what that is based on, because they armed the guns with this guiding system that could just one bullet kill, like, I can't remember exactly the rate, but it was an insane amount of human beings per minute, right? And then you hear things about like weaponized illnesses, weaponized viruses, etc. So again, do research. There's a lot of credence behind, I'm not gonna call them conspiracy theories, conspiracy analysis. There's a lot of credibility behind it. So let's just read 2 more of this. So, guide reproduction wisely. What the fuck does that mean? So you're going to be on the bedside when I'm engaging in intercourse with my missus. What do you mean? Guide reproduction wisely, right? Improving fitness and diversity. Go on, my son, get in. And thirdly, unite humanity with a living
New language.
Do you know what? Let me read out all of these. So, 4, rule passion, faith, tradition, and all things with tempered reason. 5, protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts. 6, let all nations rule internally, resolving external disputes in a world court. 7, avoid petty laws and useless officials. What does that mean? Avoid petty laws and useless officials. Like, that sounds good, right?
Yeah.
You say, let's avoid petty laws, yeah, and useless officials, but on whose discretion? That's where it gets dark.
Yeah, that is
on
very
the surface,
true.
you'd be like,
Everyone has a
can get down
different
with that.
perspective.
But on whose authority? On whose discretion? 8, balance personal rights with social duties. 9, prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite. What do they mean by seeking harmony with the infinite? Right, I know what they mean, but these are the questions that people should be asking. 10, be not a cancer on the earth. Leave room for nature. And again, leave room for nature.
And they emphasize on that.
So you start by saying, let's clear the planet of human beings. And then you end by saying, basically, be not a cancer, leave room for nature. So let's clear them out. Clearly, we consider them to be a cancer, right? And let's leave room for more nature. Now, the reason why we're bringing this stuff up is there's so much evidence out there for people to start looking into and really start asking questions. What is this world really all about? Who is the Illuminati? What is this? All of this symbolism that's even on your dollar. It's even on the US dollar. World reserve currency is completely baked with symbolism. And there's answers to all of this symbolism. All of this information.
And then
is
not just that as well. Why is it so much in our face as well?
See that. I'm just going to touch on this, and I just want to tie this back to Bitcoin and round up. But that is all about how the balance between free will and karma. There's 2 core fundamental primitives to how the universe works and how we navigate our way through the universe. Karma is our physical attachment to reality. Okay, the more karma it is you burn off, the less need you have for this physical attachment. It's a process of ascension.
Yeah.
Basically, don't be a wanker.
And correct me if I'm wrong, I've always seen karma as the cosmic law.
Yeah. So it's one of the governors and regulators, because love thy neighbor as you love thyself, right? Treat others as you would like to be treated. Because if you don't, it's baked into the laws of karma. And guess what? If you're running around with a lot of these crimes against humanity that these groups are involved in, we're talking about trafficking, treason, arms deals, drug trade, drug wars, while war of drugs is never resolved, pedophilia, the whole lot. The most heinous, horrific crimes on this planet are run by these groups, and it's massively breaking out all over the world. And even Cardinal Pell, the 3rd highest authority of the Vatican, has now been charged with child pedophilia. And that definitely goes up to Francis, by the way. 100% goes up to Francis. I think he's just recently putting out some posts out there of how bad it is and how basically, don't take this as a quote, but essentially that the wrath of God will be
placed on those individuals. Yeah. And there's been a lot of stories about the Vatican and this whole QAnon movement. Might as well bring that up as well, because we're in that space at the moment.
We're swimming.
Yeah. The whole QAnon movement. I know we were not meant to be very date specific on this particular topic, which I know the person behind the camera is going to be looking at me at the moment, but within 20 days, I believe it is from now, from the last post that QAnon made, from 20 days from now, there's going to be another very high level person. And of course, the person that is actually behind, I believe is one of the NFL teams, has actually just recently come out that he was involved in these very same circuits.
Yep.
Now, 20 days from now, another very high profile name will be getting dropped.
So let's just go through some low hanging fruit. Harvey Weinstein. This NFL team owner, forget his name. If you could try and quickly Google him, bring him up. Forget his name. The Smallville actress, blonde lady. R. Kelly, of course. Cardinal Pell. Anthony Weinstein, Hillary Clinton's chief of staff, who was married, who I don't know if he's still married to her, but married to Huma Abedin, who was groomed by essentially the female faction of ISIS. Joe Biden not been convicted of anything, so we can say officially this is stepping into speculation era, but just do some research and some studies on Joe Biden, who is Barack Obama's, at least publicly, Barack Obama's best mate.
And the title for this one, New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft's arrested in prostitution and sex trafficking busts. And the thing is, with all of these people that have very high profiles, very high positions of power, it is very much centered around the same particular topics, whether it's sex trafficking, prostitution, or child pedophilia.
Yeah. And this goes back to the things that we were speaking about earlier, about what do you have to do to climb up the ranks of power and get access to the secrets of the universe? What do you have to do? Mm-hmm. There are stages of rituals. Each stage is higher, more humiliating, and more incriminating. These things are documented and recorded. So if you're performing a horrific act on an underaged individual, and that is held as evidence against you within your cult circle, you're their bitch forever. Right? And a lot of these individuals and these people, complete utter pursuit of power, but some of them would have been born into a lot of these circles and then forced into doing these things. And this is actually where a lot of the leaks are coming from, because the hero's journey isn't necessarily always a clean one. A lot of these people who were doing really bad things, whether for whatever reason, I'm not giving them any excuse, for whatever reason, but these are also the same individuals who are so close to these circles, who actually have the ability to expose these very individuals and these circles. This is really what the QAnon movement is about. And what's really interesting about Q and the QAnon movement is just recently he got his message from a Trump tweet and then communicated on the QAnon, was it 8chan, 4chan, 8chan post at a 0 Delta time delay. It is, we got a good audience here because they could be crypto-based people. To get 0 Delta on between a tweet and what you post in relation to that tweet on the forum, anyone within the tech space will understand just how difficult that is. Yeah. Right? 0 Delta. So any QAnon debunkers out there who don't think that this individual is so closely tied to the US president is kidding themselves. Abso-fucking-lutely, fundamentally, to the point of soon embarrassment, kidding themselves. And this is what mainstream media is trying to navigate people away from, that this stuff isn't real, this isn't what's going on, that the fact that the old guard is on fire, the house of cards is on fire, now leading on to Bitcoin. So the house of cards is on fire, the old guard's on fire, the way that the world has been run is on fire. You've got Russia selling US debt. I think they're holding record lows. China doing the same thing. And they're bullish on gold. Abso-fucking-lutely bullish on gold. Okay? My hunch is we will see another gold-backed currency. I think probably this is pretty much what America's play is going to be and Trump's play is going to be. Also, I believe that Trump has confiscated a lot of the wealth from these D-state actors. Trillions. Illicit drug trades, child trafficking rings, all over. This is why these people are being arrested. This is why there's in excess of 70,000 sealed indictments in America right now, which on average is only meant to be 1,000. Each indictment can have up to 92 or 93, if I'm not mistaken, individuals per indictment.
And in regards to that, so you can actually see physical proof as well. There was a situation that happened a few weeks ago in LA where there were, I believe, 3 or 4...
the military trials, right?
The military helicopters in the middle of the city. But there was, I believe, 3 or 4 military helicopters that landed in the middle of a busy street in LA. They raided an individual's home, and I believe there was another place that was
2 buildings,
within close proximity. And what I want you guys to do is research the individual that actually owned these properties and what his origins are.
So what's the best thing to research? So US military, what do they call it? Training exercise?
Yeah, training exercise. If you literally just Google the training exercise in LA that happened recently.
Military training exercise, LA. And you could probably whack Clinton's name into that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So The old guard, the house of cards on fire. The only fire exit, I'm not gonna say the only actually, there's a couple. You've got gold, but that's more as a store of value. And then you've got to look into things like, okay, well, when the Bretton Woods Agreement did come in the US, and the history of the US and the reputation with gold, from gold confiscation to gold being legal, it has a rocky history. Other jurisdictions also have a rocky history. To why Switzerland, ironically, is considered relatively stable. But then even in this scenario, Switzerland, in terms of gold, you have to understand what Geneva is. You have to understand what Switzerland is. You have to understand why even the Queen's bloodline links back to there, right? Transylvania, all that kind of crazy shit, right? So maybe in this scenario, like having your gold in their jurisdiction might not be the best thing, right? But gold as an asset, in terms of everything else that's going on and what we believe the plans are for the US and repegging their currency with gold, yes, gold is a play worth looking into. And where it gets slightly controversial for us with crypto and Bitcoin, and this is why we've been ramping up our efforts to be influencing the narrative, and why we keep saying it's time to grow up, and ultimately because we've had 10 years. We have had 10 years to be ready for this moment, to soak up the world's banking volume. Because once these revelations become public, once people know 10% of what it is that we've been exposing ourselves for the last decade and a half, 25% will tip most of the population over the edge. 50%, who the hell knows what's really gonna start happening. Yeah. Okay. Once people start getting these data dumps, and by the way, Kim.com, I think it was on the 5th of January this year. Kim.com, who has been accurate on every single leak coming from WikiLeaks, etc. He said that the leaks that are coming out this year is going to make everything look infantile. Like, so he's laying down that these dumps are coming. Okay. This is what we need to be ready for. This is why it's so important to scale. This is why I support Bitcoin SV. This is why we support Bitcoin SV. This is why we support real Bitcoin, real Bitcoin. And we don't have time to fuck around. We need to scale, and we need to scale quickly, because we have an opportunity here to really capture the birth from the destruction of the old guard. That is what this cryptocurrency community should be focusing on. And instead, we have been completely indoctrinated and poisoned by the mentality of the old guard. And that is divide and conquer. You're this camp, your Bitcoin Cash, your Bitcoin SV, your BTC, your SegWit, your Litecoin, your Monero, your Zcash, your Ethereum. Shut the fuck up. You don't even realize that through this divide and conquer and having our attention split, we're playing into exactly what the power structure wants. We can't assimilate ourselves at all. We can't even organize ourselves out of a paper bag.
And that's why 99% of the market doesn't work at the moment. Yeah. And that is why you have to really and truly understand what real Bitcoin is, down to the token economics and down to the mathematics that it's actually built upon, to truly understand why we are side by side with BSV. And we know that BSV is what we need to utilize to be able to actually soak up a lot of the liquidity that will come from those industries once the whole thing does go pop.
And this is something that I touch on in the CoinGeek talk. And I speak about how the world would look, how the world looks at present with the fiat banking system and the pyramid of power, how the world looks on Bitcoin, the transparency that Bitcoin provides. And that's really what Bitcoin provides the world. And people have a very warped interpretation as to what centralization and decentralization really truly is. And show an example of what an anarchist world, state, globalist society would look like. The globalists would love the world to run on Monero, really would. So the CoinGeek talk, and what I'm really getting at there, is highlighting that this is the core that we need to focus on with Bitcoin. And I'm so thankful and glad that is something that is being reverberated by even more senior people within this community. Craig Wright bangs on about this as well, and recently incredibly aggressively. He's putting out amazing content, amazing blog posts around how important it is the fact that Bitcoin is transparent and legal, right? And people really need to understand just how important that is. Every issue we have with the world right now is because there's clusters and pockets of anonymity that is controlled by the individuals who control the whole freaking system, who are distracting you from even realizing this is how the system is run, right? And because we are so indoctrinated with all these other distractions, right? Oh, shiny new car. Oh, shiny new house. Oh, shiny new bag, right? We're distracted with all these other, oh, have you seen Kim Kardashian's new butt implants? Right? You know that when you slap her bum, it only ripples about 3 times as opposed to 2 times now, right?
And your hand bounces back further than what you started with.
All of these complete insignificant pieces of information. I'm not saying that you can't chill out and just have a relaxed time with just watching some BS, right? But don't lose sight. Ask some questions. Stay woke, as they say, because this is what needs to be focused on. And this is what I love about SV. This is what I'm really grateful and thankful that we have N-Chain, we have CoinGeek, we have all the supporters around the SV camp, SV community who have stayed true with that clarity and who are fighting forward towards this. Because we have such an opportunity right now where the world is about to be reset. And that we have an incredible advantageous position as a global community who can now not just distribute the spoken word, who can now trade in one reference way of valuing time and skill. That is the beauty of Bitcoin. That is what the old guard never would have wanted. Interesting point on that, actually. Alex Jones podcast, well, not Alex Jones podcast, Joe Rogan podcast, right? Alex Jones was on it, okay? And he said that he was offered $5 million by representatives of George Soros, that if he backs off Soros and stops basically slagging him off publicly, okay? But interestingly, in Bitcoin, he's offered this. But he said at the time of delivery of receiving it, he would have been worth circa, I think, 38 million. So he said this was about 8 years ago. So this is 2011, okay? Bitcoin's incredibly volatile back then. So he was offered bribery money, hush money of 5 million in Bitcoin. But interestingly, the other condition to take the money was that he had to pump Bitcoin.
It makes you ask a lot of questions.
Makes you ask an incredible amount of questions. I'm not saying that, okay, does this mean the deep state, George Soros, etc., was created Bitcoin? That's not what I'm saying. That's not where my mind's going. But the thing that we are now going to start really delving into a lot more, and something that we've been looking into for about 2 years, we've had this thought in our mind for about 2 years, right? And I've lightly touched on this with Craig as well, about higher powers and higher influences and agendas at a much higher level. In private settings, I've spoken about that with Craig. I just find it fascinating that this just popped up on the scene with Alex Jones and that angle, because if you really look into what SegWit is, what Lightning Network is, limiting the block size, if you look at the real implications of this, and if you really truly understood how perfectly harmonious the mathematics in Bitcoin is, it simulates the universe. It is a biological system. Understand Tesla's work, you understand Bitcoin.
And that ties into the whole 3, 6, and 9.
So we are at a crossroad, a very positive one. This is a narrative that I want to make sure that Bitstocks is really at the forefront of. We're going to have way more conversations like this. To those who think that we cover some crazy stuff, I assure you, me and Antonio will still being very censored. We want to apply 10% rule with this. We don't want to just give a huge data dump and just leave people like, oh my God, man, what the hell? At the same time, we don't just want to speak about issues about building and providing solutions.
Yeah, and not just that as well. With the 10% rule, it also gives people time to properly tuck into those particular topics and do deep dives on them so they fully understand it. And then we'll start hitting on to the next 10%, the next 10%, the next 10%, until we've basically gone through the whole book.
Yep, whole book, start to finish, Genesis to present.
Yep.
Who the hell are we? What is this all about? And why is Bitcoin so important? And why does that crazy Michael Hudson believe that Bitcoin shouldn't just be looked at as a technology that will only be utilized on Earth. And we'll leave on that point.
We'll leave it there.
All right. Well, different
flow.
Different direction.
Yeah.
Different direction, different flow. But one that we are definitely going to be continuing here at Bitstocks. And I definitely recommend that if you like this video, like, subscribe. If you don't like it, hit dislike and fire away in the comments. We're not a group of individuals here at Bitstocks that's afraid from a debate. All that we ask, as long as you're respectful, then you'll get a response from us. And if you're not respectful, you might get a response from maybe me personally, not from the firm, which might not be as favorable as the first initial response was. And that is simply because we learn to teach and we teach to learn. And we just want people to do the same. Any subject should be viewed should be perceived with the view of being enlightened. And anything should be questioned with the view of being enlightened. You shouldn't question to debunk. You shouldn't question to have a negative stance. You should question always and be skeptical with the view to be afforded new information. And don't be too quick to take in that new information as fact. Once you check it out, then you can have satisfaction, then you can move forward. And then after a while of having that same process with maybe us or other people on the platform and other people globally that you may start looking into, only once they've built up that reputation with you, then maybe can you slightly let your guard down a bit, and then open up a new channel for someone else who offers even more information. So on that message, as always, peace, love, and light. See you guys next time.